Okay, so we're here in Mike Adams' office. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm the General Manager of Desktop Management within the Microsoft Managed Solutions Group.
Okay, and how long have you been at Microsoft doing this?
I've been at Microsoft since 1993.
Okay.
Implemented a lot of different systems within Microsoft. Where I really made my name within the company was driving the Microsoft implementation of SAP, where we took a large number of systems from around the world and consolidated them into one single instance of SAP. I ran Microsoft's line of business applications for a number of years, and then about 2 years ago, I moved over to head up the desktop management part of the Microsoft Managed Services offering.
Okay, so tell us about the group. Tell us about managed services. What all does that encompass?
Managed services is it's a set of software plus service offerings that we're beginning to offer to external customers to help them better manage their environment the way that we are managing Microsoft's environment. It includes desktop management, patching, software distribution, operating system upgrades, and things like that, as well as messaging and collaboration services covering Exchange, SharePoint, and instant messaging.
Okay, so when you say you've been doing this for a couple of years, is a managed desktop relatively new at Microsoft? What does that mean?
A managed desktop is a very new thing at Microsoft, and as a software company, and the innovation requirements of the average Microsoft person, there are a number of challenges in being able to effectively manage a desktop. We have a high number of very technical people who tinker with their computers quite a bit. So it's a little bit different from the profile of an average company, and that's one of the reasons why Microsoft is a little bit of an edge even in how we manage PCs, but it's also a great place to learn because of the heterogeneity of the types of work that people do.
Okay. Now I understand you came from another meeting before this one. You had a Bill Gates review, is that what I heard?
Yeah, I spent a couple hours this morning with Bill. We meet with Bill to talk about our progress and mostly our challenges with managed services about every 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
And we've been meeting with him for the entire 2 years that I've been working on the project at about that schedule. Software plus services is very important to Microsoft's future, and therefore it's very high on Bill's list. And the real focus of the meetings is how we can lower the total cost of ownership for all users of Microsoft software, what changes we can drive into the products that will lower that cost, and the learning that we're getting by not only running Microsoft's desktops, messaging, collaboration services, but also running it for a couple of external customers as part of this offering. That learning is really feeding back into product changes, and what Bill wants to spend a lot of time talking about is how that should change the fundamental architecture of our technology going forward.
Okay. So do those end up being pretty technical meetings for an executive meeting?
For an executive meeting, I would say they're very technical. They're weighted between business discussions and technical discussions. Bill's very, very interested in the real-life impact on the average user and the real-world impact to IT and other customers of changes in our technology and how we can lower the costs, make things more manageable, improve the overall experience. So in these meetings, it's both the managed services group sitting with Bill. It's also leaders of different product groups whose products we sit on top of.
Okay.
Because we're not, managed services isn't a product by itself. It's really a wrapping of a number of Microsoft's on-premise packaged products and providing the ability for customers to take those products as a service rather than having to run them themselves on-premise as their only alternative.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about that. The idea of, so are we outsourcing desktop management then? Are we taking that on for customers?
We are taking on desktop management for customers. That business is still in an incubation phase. We have one customer, Energizer Holdings, that we've just about completed the rollout of managing all of their desktops. We have another customer that we're just beginning the rollout of their desktops, and we're looking for a couple of other customers to really round out and give us the breadth of customer experience.
Okay. So tell me what a managed desktop looks like. You know, when I started with Microsoft 9 years ago, people came to me and said, "How do you guys manage your desktops? How do you do a rollout of a new version of Office?" And the answer was, "Oh, they email out a link to the new install and we go do it." Tell me how that's different in the managed environment.
Well, in a managed environment, there are alternatives in which to provide different types of services to end users. So we've segmented our managed desktop offering into three different profiles of managed desktop. One is a fixed function machine. This isn't something that really exists at Microsoft. It exists at our external customers, but it's a machine, a PC, that really has a single purpose. So a great example is a shop floor control PC. It's hooked up to a number of machines. It really has a very limited number of applications running on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the key qualifier there is reliability for that machine. You want to keep it very locked down. You want to ensure that nothing can change on that machine,
right,
that it's going to be incredibly reliable and up.
Mm-hmm.
The second profile that we have is what we call our standard profile. This is what you think of as a typical managed desktop. It is locked down, and the end user cannot just go ahead and change any setting that they want to change. A number of the settings are centrally controlled. User also can't just install any software that they want to install on that PC. They can install from an approved list of software that's been prepackaged and staged and tested with the managed desktop. Also to ensure reliability, ensure that the desktops will be managed very effectively at the lowest cost. Then the third profile that we have, we call the admin profile. And this is a profile that's more flexible and allows end users to change a large number of configuration settings of the machine, install any application that they choose to install on the machine. At Microsoft, really, our developers, which is a huge percentage of our pool
right,
at Microsoft, fall into this profile. At customers, the number of employees that fall into the admin profile really differs, depending on the profile of the company.
Okay. What was the investment in building those profiles? How long did it take to build a standard desktop that users could do what they needed to do?
Well, building a standard desktop is something that requires sitting down with the customer and talking to them about their environment, and then running a software inventory tool to discover all of the software that's established in their environment, what users are really using, what sits on all of their PCs around the world, understand the commonalities there so that you can get down to an image that really represents the base lowest common denominator across an entire company. And then figure out what are the additional optional software that some sets of users will need, but not all sets of users. And see if you can break those into profiles that sit on top of the image. So you may have a profile for finance users, a profile for human resources users or engineers. Depending on the company, there will be different profiles that will include a standard list of applications for that group. And then you try to have a small number of unique applications that a given user may install for some other reason, something that's a little bit different from their job, from that of everyone else who's in the generic finance profile, as an example.
Okay. And then, so tell me how successful it's been so far. Within Microsoft, are you seeing reduced help desk calls, or what's it been like?
I would say there are a number of ways to measure success.
Okay.
MMS has been eminently successful in what our primary goal is,
okay,
which is to lower the long-term total cost of ownership for desktops, PCs, running Microsoft software. There have been a number of acquisitions that Microsoft's made, a number of fundamental product changes as a result of the experience that we've had both rolling desktops out within Microsoft and also rolling out a managed desktop with Energizer and beginning to with our second customer. And a great example of that would be Softricity. Softricity is a relatively small company in Massachusetts that provides application virtualization technologies. This allows you to run applications on a PC without running a full install of the application. It also allows you to run the application in a virtualized mode where it doesn't change the actual Windows registry. It runs in a protected bubble with its own registry, with its own program files tree, so it doesn't actually update program files on the PC. This has a number of benefits that really improve the manageability of the PC without detracting at all from the end user experience. To an end user, the application looks as if it's installed, but to the IT group managing the overall environment, it's much, much simpler because those applications are virtualized, run in this bubble where they're isolated from the other applications and isolated from the core Windows registry. It can solve all sorts of problems about running different versions of the same application or the same platform on a single PC.
Interesting. So is the application still running locally, or is this like a remote desktop type of a solution?
With Softricity, there are a number of ways you can configure it. You absolutely can configure it so that all the processing is taking place on the local PC.
Okay.
Can work online and offline in connected and disconnected modes. You also can configure it to run in a terminal services environment. So you could set up terminal servers and have the applications virtualized on those terminal servers. That would be a different experience. Obviously, would only work connected.
Okay. And tell me, what are some of the other components? I mean, can we do all this out of the box, or what other products have we had to buy or install in order to deliver the desktop?
Our absolute goal, one of our key principles, is to ensure that our managed services offering runs on out-of-the-box Microsoft technology. So, acquiring companies like Softricity for the app virtualization, acquiring Asset Metrics for discovery and inventory technology to be able to get a better handle on the environment before you start rolling out a managed desktop within the environment. These are technologies that the company acquired in no small part so that we could solve the problems that come with rolling out managed desktops, getting down to the lowest TCO possible. Other products that we rely upon, obviously, System Center Configuration Manager is one application that is absolutely necessary to run and manage PCs across an enterprise very, very well. Obviously, we rely on a lot of technologies that come right out of the Windows client, and with Vista, where we get a number of manageability and security improvements, the TCO will be brought down even lower.
Okay. So have we got managed Vista images now?
We, within Microsoft, have rolled out managed Vista images. We'll wait with our external customers until the product is fully released before we start rolling out managed Vista images at customers. But we both have lockdown standard profile images on Vista that we've rolled out within Microsoft, and we also obviously have a lot of employees of Microsoft running in the more wide open admin profile. In fact, we have over 60,000 Microsoft employees already running on Vista.
Wow. So what can you tell us from a standpoint of building the image that was better or worse when you moved it from XP to Vista?
In moving from XP to Vista, the image creation process is improved and simplified by having a single image that can support all of your worldwide requirements. Before, we had to have separate images for different languages and a number of different features such as that. But with Vista, we can have a single image that we can run, deploy to all of our distribution servers around the world for installation and upgrade to Vista. And it can all be the same image instead of having to juggle and manage a whole set of different images.
Okay, so if it's a tablet, or if it's a desktop, or if it's in Chinese.
All of those different scenarios can be handled from a single image now.
Wow. And how about with some of the changes to the way security is handled in Vista and user access?
Well, a big benefit of Vista for even the administrator profile is user account protection. And the benefit with UAP is it's a mode called protected admin, where software that you're running on your PC can't change core Windows settings without you directly approving the individual changes. So we think that's going to drive down a lot of the issues that customers have with malware in their environment and things such as that.
Okay. So one thing, when I talked to a lot of customers last year, we asked them, are your users administrators on their machines? And typically they said yes. We tried to make them not admins, and it was too hard. Is a managed desktop solution, does it make it easier to take admin rights away from users to control what they actually can do?
Well, I'll answer that in two ways. First, I'll talk about Vista a little bit. Vista makes standard user profile much more functional. A lot of the things that really made a lockdown standard user experience very difficult on Windows XP are solved. Simple things like changing your time zone,
right?
Being able to change your power settings. Things such as that weren't very functional in a standard user in XP. In Vista, all the normal activities that an end user has to do are allowed within the standard user profile, but changing core system settings, changing the firewall, for instance, or installing software that could be malware or could be fine software, those types of things aren't allowed on a standard profile, even in Vista, unless it's an approved application that sits within the standard install mechanism, which obviously is SMS for us.
Okay.
So with a standard, with a managed desktop, we've gone through the work of preparing all of the applications for installation, making them available, understanding all of the applications that an end user needs in a given environment. And then when the end user decides that they want one of these optional applications that doesn't just sit within their profile, they go through a process that for some applications that have a per unit cost associated with them, obviously there's an approval mechanism for them to be able to get an application.
Okay.
For other site license type applications that don't need to be controlled quite as tightly, the end user can just bring up the programs bar. It's just called programs in Vista, or it's add remove programs in the XP time frame. They can bring that up from control panel and they can install any of those applications directly themselves.
Okay. And we're publishing those through Active Directory, or we're using SMS?
We're publishing those through SMS.
Okay. So tell me about the process that you go through when we decide we're going to take a group of users and move them to a managed desktop from an unmanaged one. Can you tell me what the process that goes through with their current desktop to move their stuff onto a managed machine?
From an end user perspective, the process is very clear, very simple in moving from an unmanaged machine to a managed machine. They get a list of applications that their company has approved that will be on their machine once we convert them to a managed desktop. They have to follow a few simple instructions about leaving their machine plugged into the network before they leave for the day. They leave, and when they come back in the next day, they have a managed desktop. All of their data has been restored to that machine. All the approved applications have been added to the machine, and they're productive from the moment that they go back to work.
Okay. And then what are we doing? What's actually happening on the back end to make that happen?
What's happening on the back end is that SMS is going to that machine, backing up all of the user settings through the standard user state migration technology, backing up all of their data, all of their settings to a server. Then the machine is going through the operating system deployment process within SMS, where the entire operating system is removed and then re-added back to the machine. In most cases, they're also being upgraded to a new operating system. As part, they get all the latest bits, and then all of their data and all their settings are being restored back onto the machine.
Okay. So it's all automated, really.
The vast majority is automated. The only things that wouldn't be automated are things that are unique one-offs, where there may, in a night where you're deploying hundreds of desktops, there may be a few desktops where there's a very unique application that needs to be installed, manually for one reason or another. But the focus of all of our efforts is to turn the entire process into a 100% automated solution.
Okay. How much are you leveraging group policy?
Group policy is being used very heavily, especially in the XP timeframe. We're using group policy to control which software is allowed and disallowed to be installed. We also use group policy to ensure a number of configuration settings remain consistent across an entire enterprise. It's an important tool in the manageability tool set.
Okay. So we've talked about SMS, we talked about group policy, you mentioned Softricity. Any other components that we're kind of pulling together for a managed desktop?
Well, the other that I talked about a little bit, but I didn't go into much depth, is asset metrics. And asset metrics is really important. One of the most difficult parts of the conversion to a managed desktop is just understanding your environment. Mm-hmm. Understanding when you didn't have controls on your environment, you don't really know all the software that all of your users use. We find going and talking to prospective customers that generally they think they have a better idea of their environment than they really have once the environment is measured. There are applications that they were unaware of that individual departments or employees went and purchased and then created business processes that rely upon. And that's a good thing. It's making a business more productive, but it would be a very bad thing if we all of a sudden removed that software as part of a conversion to a more managed desktop. What asset metrics allows you to do is, before we've begun any of the migration processes, while we're still in the planning phase for the migration project, we run an agent across an entire environment for a company. And the agent discovers all the hardware, profiles it, stores up a bunch of information about hard disk space and other things that are important to ensuring the successful migration. But most importantly, it captures all of the software and tells you in a very clear ways exactly what that software is and classifies the type of software. This is something that before we had asset metrics was incredibly difficult, because we could get a list of what all the executables and binaries were, but they aren't always registered in consistent ways. And therefore, it was hard to distinguish what's an important application versus what is a unique one-off or something personal or something that wasn't being used very often, and all those sorts of things. What asset metrics allows us to do is walk in, deploy this agent, and get a number of reports back that tell us exactly what the applications are with good, healthy descriptions, how they're classified, and really empowers us to plan the deployments very well up front.
Okay. One thing that I think would be interesting is when you go from kind of a wild environment where people are administrators and install what they want, and go to a managed environment, there's kind of a culture shift that has to happen for users. They're used to their home machine, they can install what they want at home. Now they've got a machine at the office. Any advice for how to manage the culture change that's got to happen within a company when you move to a managed desktop?
There's no doubt moving to a managed desktop can be an impactful culture change. It's very important to very clearly communicate the business drivers for the company doing the conversion, so that end users can understand what they're getting as well as what they're giving up, and understand the protection of the company by ensuring that all the software is well understood and has been approved, that there isn't malware in the environment, the protection of the data, keeping the data within the corporation, and eliminating a lot of risks that exist in current environments around data privacy, confidential data being maintained and stored securely and safely, and risks of malware in an environment. So, and also the benefits from productivity that come from having a more reliable PC.
Okay. I need to take just a minute and show this. For people that think that it only ever rains in Seattle, I don't know if I can get this, if this will pick up out here. It is, I don't have the other window open, so you can't, the sun is actually shining, but we're getting a huge kind of a sleety snow thing going on out here. See, it doesn't always just rain in Redmond. All right. Well, Mike, do you have any kind of closing thoughts or anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up?
I guess the only thing I'd want to point out is that managed services is a really important direction for the company overall going forward. The vision for Microsoft is that any software that we provide to companies will be able to provide as on-premise software that the company can run for themselves, or as software as a service where they could come to Microsoft, or they could come to Microsoft's partners to run their environment and manage their environment, or just certain aspects of their environment for a given company, so that that company can take their scarce IT, IQ resources and focus them on the technologies that will really help them differentiate themselves from their competitors. And that's really our overall goal, is to empower those businesses and the individuals at the businesses to be able to be more successful by us taking some of the management aspects off their worry list.
Okay, great. Well, we'll close with that. Thanks for your time, Mike.
Thank you.